The judge's words slammed down like a gavel on my soul, each one a nail in the coffin of my voice. "Your silence," she declared, her eyes cold and devoid of empathy, "is a condition of you remaining her parent." In that moment, the courtroom, the lawyers, the very air around me seemed to vanish, leaving only that monstrous, impossible choice. My silence or my daughter. They were banking on my fear. They believed they could threaten me into submission. What they never, ever counted on was the unshakable power of my love. This is the story of a mother's promise. A promise to protect her child against a system that saw her not as a person, but as a commodity. It's a look at how insidious bias and hidden greed can corrupt the very institutions designed to be our safety net, and how a single, ugly word aimed at my beautiful daughter uncovered a rot so deep it threatened to swallow us whole. Before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, and leave your like. Helps a lot. Our home was more than just a house. It was our sanctuary, a fortress built on a foundation of Saturday morning pancake art, whispered bedtime stories, and the vibrant, chaotic beauty of my 8-year-old daughter Maya. When I adopted Maya, I felt a piece of my soul I never knew was missing click into place. She was pure light. Her laughter was an explosion of joy that could chase the shadows from any room, and her spirit was so blindingly bright it was as if she had swallowed a star. The walls of our little house weren't painted. They were wallpapered with her drawings, a riot of purples, golds, and brilliant blues, each one a portal into her magnificent imagination. Our cat, Mittens, was a frequent subject, often depicted as a caped superhero soaring over our city. We had our rituals, sacred and unbroken. Every single night, I would sit on the edge of her bed and braid her hair. My fingers would gently work through the beautiful tight coils as she recounted the day's adventures, the drama of the playground, the mystery of a missing library book, the triumph of a gold star in math. It was in these quiet, intimate moments that I felt the profound, humbling weight of being her mother. My purpose on this earth felt crystalline in its clarity, to protect that brilliant light inside her, to be a guardian for her spirit, no matter the cost. I just had no idea that a man in a cheap suit, carrying a clipboard and a heart full of casual cruelty, was about to put that promise to the ultimate soul-shattering test. The visit was supposed to be a formality, a routine post-adoption follow-up from the County Family Services Agency. Just a box to be ticked on some forgotten form. I'd spent the morning cleaning the house to a comical, surgical sweet level of perfection. I baked her favorite dark chocolate cookies, their rich aroma filling our sanctuary. I explained to Maya that a man was coming to make sure we were happy in our home. She was thrilled, buzzing with excitement, mostly about the prospect of showing off her latest masterpiece. Super Mittens saves a school bus. I felt a low hum of anxiety, the kind any parent feels when they know they're about to be judged, but I pushed it down. We weren't just fine, we were thriving. What was there to worry about? Mr. Henderson arrived at 10 o'clock sharp. He was a man whose profound blandness felt like a carefully constructed disguise. He had watery, forgettable eyes that didn't seem to see things so much as catalog them. He moved through our home with a chilling detachment, his gaze sweeping over our family photos without a flicker of interest. He went through his checklist, his voice a monotone drone. He asked about Maya's school, her friends, her health. I answered each question calmly, my voice steady, offering him a cookie which he waved away with an air of superiority. Maya, initially shy, eventually couldn't contain her excitement any longer. She ran to him, her drawing of Super Mittens held out like a precious offering. He took it, gave it a cursory glance and murmured, "Very nice." Before his eyes resumed their cold scan of our living room, he was packing his briefcase, a sense of relief washing over me when he paused. His eyes landed on the plate of dark chocolate cookies on the coffee table. He picked one up, holding it between his thumb and forefinger. He looked from the dark, rich cookie in his hand to my daughter's beautiful, radiant black skin. A slow, venomous smirk crept onto his face. He held the cookie up almost like an exhibit. "Oh, look," he said, his voice a sickening drawl of condescending amusement. "This one's a little brownie. Just like you." The word just hung there in the air. Thick, suffocating, and brutally sharp. It wasn't a joke. It was a weapon, carefully chosen and expertly deployed. I watched, as if in slow motion, as the brilliant light in Maya's eyes flickered and died. I saw her shoulders hunch forward, her small body instinctively trying to shrink to disappear. She didn't know the long, painful history of that slur, but she understood the tone, the mockery, the reduction. In the space of a single heartbeat, she knew she had been diminished from a beloved child to a thing. Brownie. My entire world narrowed to that single, horrific moment. A cold, quiet rage, a type of fury I had never experienced, began to build in the hollow of my chest. It was clean and pure and terrifyingly powerful. I looked at Mr. Henderson, whose smirk hadn't faded. He was waiting, expecting me to nervously laugh it off, to be a good, compliant little mother and ignore the poison he'd just spat into our sanctuary. He did not get the reaction he wanted. "What did you just say?" My voice was unervingly low, stripped of all emotion except a dangerous calm. His smirk finally faltered, a flash of surprise in his dull eyes. "It was a joke. Don't be so sensitive." "Get out of my house," I said. The words were quiet, but they carried the undeniable weight of an approaching storm. "Now." He seemed genuinely taken aback, affronted. "There's no need to be hostile, ma'am. I'm just doing my job here." "Your job," I replied, my voice starting to tremble with the force of the rage I was holding back, "is to ensure my daughter's well-being. You have just done the exact opposite. You have harmed her. Get out." He finally snapped his briefcase shut, a flicker of something ugly and vindictive crossing his face. He walked out the door, but the poison of his words remained, staining the air of our home. I locked the door behind him, my hand trembling uncontrollably, and turned to face my daughter. Her drawing of super mittens was now a crumpled ball in her tiny fist. She wouldn't look at me. She just stared at the floor, and I knew, with a certainty that broke my heart, that a piece of her vibrant, innocent world had just been shattered. The instant that door clicked shut, my rage galvanized into action. I was on the phone, my voice shaking but firm, demanding to speak to Mr. Henderson's supervisor. After a labyrinth of automated menus, I was connected to a woman whose voice oozed a kind of weaponized boredom. I explained everything. His exact words, the cruel smirk, the way my daughter flinched and crumpled as if struck. I expected shock. I expected a profuse apology. I expected an immediate assurance that this monstrous behavior would be dealt with swiftly and severely. What I got was a long, tired, bureaucratic sigh. "Ma'am," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "Mr. Henderson has been with us for 15 years. He's a consummate professional. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand his intent?" Misunderstand. The word was like a slap. He called my 8-year-old black daughter a brownie, while smirking at her. There is no misunderstanding that. It was racist, unprofessional, and deeply cruel. "Those are very serious allegations," she said, her voice shifting from bored to defensive. "We will have to open a file and file a report. Of course, we need to get both sides of the story." Both sides. There was a man who used a racial slur against a child, and a mother demanding accountability. What other side was there? I hung up the phone, a new layer of fury mixing with a dawning, sickening dread. I had gone to the system for protection and was met with a granite wall of denial and suspicion. A week later, a thick, official-looking envelope arrived. It wasn't an apology. It was a formal notice from the agency. My blood ran ice-cold as I tore it open and read the attached report, filed by Mr. Henderson himself. He had twisted our entire interaction into a grotesque caricature. He described me as combative, unpredictable, and emotionally volatile. He claimed my aggressive overreaction to a light-hearted rapport-building comment had created a palpably unstable and hostile environment. Then came the final, devastating blow. Citing grave concern for Maya's emotional well-being in a potentially hostile home, He was officially recommending that she be placed in mandatory therapeutic observation. The system wasn't just protecting its own. It was retaliating. They were going to use my daughter to punish me for daring to speak out. If you're still here with me, don't forget to subscribe, activate notifications, leave your like, and share this video with someone. The change in Maya was immediate and heartbreaking. The vibrant light inside her, the light I had sworn to protect, was dimming before my eyes. She stopped leaving her colorful drawings on the fridge. Our nightly braiding rituals grew silent and tense. The nightmares started soon after. She'd wake up screaming, tangled in her sheets, but she couldn't explain what she was dreaming about. I'd hold her small, trembling body, my own heart shattering with a terrible, suffocating guilt. I had stood up to the wolf at the door, only to have him convince the entire village that I was the monster. And my innocent daughter was the one paying the price. The court-ordered therapy sessions were a new and insidious kind of violation. The therapist, a Dr. Evans, had a sterile office that felt more like an interrogation room than a place of healing. Her questions were never really for Maya. They were aimed at me, each one a carefully disguised accusation. "How have you been managing your stress levels, Anna? Feeling a little overwhelmed lately? Any history of anger management issues you'd care to discuss?" I was on trial, and every session was a terrifying tightrope walk. I had to project an aura of perfect, unshakable calm, knowing that any flicker of my righteous, justifiable anger would be documented and used as further evidence against me. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in plain sight. They had stolen my voice, and in the process, they were systematically stealing my daughter's spirit, one beige-walled, soul-crushing therapy session at a time. The ghost of my child sat beside me, and I knew with chilling certainty that if I didn't do something drastic, I was going to lose her forever. The court summons arrived on a gray, drizzly Tuesday morning. I was being called to a preliminary hearing. My overworked public defender told me it was likely just a formality. "Just stay calm," she advised, her eyes tired. "Answer their questions, be polite. Don't show any anger. They'll be watching you for that." Walking into the sterile, imposing family courtroom felt like stepping into an alternate reality where everything was upside down. Mr. Henderson was there, seated next to a sharp-suited lawyer from the agency. He refused to look at me, staring straight ahead with an air of smug righteousness. Then Judge Davis entered, an older woman with iron-gray hair and an aura of unshakable, severe authority. It wasn't a hearing. It was a meticulously planned ambush. The agency lawyer stood and painted a portrait of me as an unhinged, paranoid parent. My legitimate complaint against Henderson was twisted and presented as a symptom of my own deep-seated instability. His report, a document composed entirely of malicious lies, was treated as gospel truth. When my lawyer finally had a chance to speak, she tried to bring up the racist nature of Henderson's comment. Judge Davis cut her off before she could even finish the sentence. "We are not here to debate hurt feelings or subjective interpretations of humor," the judge said, her voice like steel. "We are here to determine the best interests of the child." A 15-year veteran social worker's report indicates a volatile home environment. The mother's subsequent aggressive actions seemed to corroborate this assessment. My stomach plummeted. They had done it. They had successfully twisted my fierce, protective love for my daughter into evidence of my own unfitness. But the worst, the absolute worst, was yet to come. Judge Davis fixed her cold, unwavering gaze on me. "This court's primary concern is the child's emotional stability," she announced to the room. "The constant revisiting of this inciting incident, the mother's clear fixation on it, is not a healthy environment for a child to heal." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Therefore, this court is issuing a protective order. Effective immediately. Gag order." She looked directly at me. "Anna," she said, my name sounding like an indictment, "you are hereby forbidden from discussing any aspect of this case, your grievances against the agency, or Mr. Henderson in any public or private forum. This includes social media, speaking with the press, or even discussing the details with friends. Any attempt to agitate this issue further will be seen as a direct violation of this order, and will force the court to immediately reconsider your custody of Maya. Your silence is a condition of you remaining her parent. Is that understood? It was a cage. A soundproof, invisible cage constructed just for me. She was isolating me, severing my connections to the outside world, ensuring I could not fight back. It was a move of such breathtaking cruelty, designed not to protect my child, but to break my spirit. I looked at my lawyer, who stood stunned and speechless. I looked at Henderson, who had the faintest trace of a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. And in that moment I understood. This was never about Maya's well-being. It was about power. And I had just been rendered completely and utterly powerless. The silence the judge imposed was a physical presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket that smothered every aspect of my life. It worked exactly as they intended. I felt profoundly, terrifyingly alone. When my sister called, bubbling with questions, I had to force a cheerful, hollow tone. "Everything's fine," I'd lie, the words feeling like acid on my tongue. I saw the worry and confusion in my friends' eyes when I'd abruptly change the subject any time they asked about Maya. The judge's words echoed in a constant loop in my mind. Your silence is a condition of you remaining her parent. They had put a lock on my voice and had made my daughter the key. The therapy sessions continued, each one a fresh hell. But it was during this suffocating period that I made a critical, chilling discovery. After one particularly draining session, I exercised my right to request a copy of Dr. Evans's clinical notes. Late one night, with Maya asleep, I sat at my kitchen table, my hands shaking as I compared my own detailed memory of the sessions with the doctor's typed summaries. The discrepancies weren't just inaccuracies. They were deliberate, malicious fabrications. A session where Maya was withdrawn and quiet was described as, "Child exhibits signs of elective mutism, suggesting deep-seated trauma related to the home environment." A moment where Maya had quietly said, "I feel quiet sometimes," was warped into, "Child reports pervasive feelings of emotional suppression, consistent with an unstable and potentially intimidating maternal environment." Dr. Evans wasn't recording what happened. She was meticulously building a case against me, twisting my daughter's pain into a weapon to be used to sever our bond. That discovery was a single, defiant spark in the suffocating darkness. The judge's order had silenced my voice, but it hadn't silenced my mind. If they were going to build a fraudulent case in the shadows, then I would start digging in those same shadows. My laptop became my only confidant. Late into the night, fueled by coffee and a mother's fury, I used encrypted browsers and public databases to pull at the threads of their conspiracy. I started with the Family Services Agency. It presented itself as a public entity, but I found that a significant chunk of its discretionary funding came from private donations, all managed through a separate foundation called the Children's Advancement Fund. I downloaded their publicly available list of board members. My breath caught in my throat. There, nestled among local philanthropists and business leaders, was a name I knew all too well: Judge Davis. The very same judge who had ordered my silence was on the board of the private foundation that was helping to fund the very agency trying to tear my family apart. It was a massive, unethical conflict of interest. But it wasn't the whole story. I needed to know why. The therapy. Henderson's report had mandated it, and Judge Davis's court had ordered it. I started digging into Dr. Evans's clinic. It was one of only a handful of private practices the agency referred cases to, and I discovered it received the vast majority of those lucrative, high-conflict referrals. The clinic itself was owned by a larger, faceless parent corporation, the Bantry Group. The final, horrifying piece of the puzzle clicked into place at 3 a.m. I was combing through years of the Children's Advancement Fund's public donation records when I found it. The Bantry Group, the owner of Dr. Evans's clinic, was a major recurring donor. It was a closed, predatory loop. I leaned back in my chair, the whole sordid, sickening picture suddenly snapping into crystal-clear focus. It was a business model, elegant in its pure evil. It all started with a trigger. A social worker like Henderson would deliberately provoke a parent. A single parent, a minority parent, someone they profiled as vulnerable. His racist comment wasn't a mistake. It was a tool. It was designed to get a reaction, to create a hostile parent on paper. Then Judge Davis, a board member of the agency's funding arm, would validate the fraudulent file and mandate expensive, long-term therapy. The case would then be funneled to a partnered clinic like Dr. Evans's, which would bill the state for months or even years of unnecessary sessions. And then the final brilliant move. The clinic's parent company, the Bantry Group, would donate a portion of those profits right back to the judge's pet project, the Children's Advancement Fund, keeping the whole corrupt machine well-oiled and thriving. They weren't protecting children. They were monetizing them. My daughter and I hadn't just been targeted. We had been processed. For a full minute, I felt nothing but absolute, crushing despair. The system wasn't just broken. It was a corrupt, self-sustaining enterprise. But then, that despair hardened into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. They thought their gag order had taken my voice. They were wrong. They had just shown me exactly how loud I needed to be. I had the fraudulent notes. I had the board memberships. I had the donation records. I had the truth. And I was done being silent. The gag order was a wall, but I had just found a sledgehammer. The legal system was compromised. The agency was the enemy. There was only one path left, to break my silence so loudly and so publicly that the echo would bring the whole rotten structure crashing down. My hands were shaking as I typed an email to Sarah Jennings, a renowned investigative journalist with a reputation for fearing no one and nothing. My email was short and to the point. I told her I was the subject of a family court gag order, and that I possessed incontrovertible evidence of a systemic financial conflict of interest involving a sitting judge, a state agency, and a private therapy provider. I told her I was willing to violate that order and risk everything. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. Violating the order meant I could lose Maya, for real this time. But living in silence while they dismantled my daughter's spirit for profit was no longer an option. It was an unthinkable surrender. I hit send. Sarah replied in under an hour. Her message was 4 words. When and where can we meet? The next day, in the anonymity of a bustling downtown coffee shop, I laid it all out for her. The falsified therapy notes, the board of directors list with Judge Davis's name circled in red, the financial filings that connected the dots. I told her the whole story, from the brownie comment to the gag order. I expected to see skepticism, but as she looked over the documents, her expression shifted to one of profound shock, which then hardened into a look of steely determination. She didn't see an unstable parent. She saw the story. For the next few weeks, Sarah and her team worked in secret, verifying every single claim, their silence a shield for me. They moved with incredible speed and discretion, finding other families, other parents who had been silenced, bullied, and pushed into the same predatory therapy for profit loop. The story broke on a Thursday night. It was the lead segment on the evening news. The headline was stark and devastating. Cash for kids' silence. Investigation uncovers corruption in family court. They used my story as the anchor but kept me anonymous, calling me one mother who risked everything. They showed the documents on screen. They laid out the entire circular flow of money with a simple, damning graphic. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. For them. In the days and weeks that followed, the entire house of cards collapsed. The director of the Family Services Agency resigned in disgrace. The city announced that all contracts with Dr. Evans's clinic and the Bantry Group were immediately suspended. A formal judicial ethics investigation into Judge Davis was launched, and she was reassigned from all family court cases, her career effectively over. Mr. Henderson was unceremoniously fired. Dr. Evans had her license suspended pending a full review. My victory was quiet. There were no parades, no press conferences. I just sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had uncovered the truth, and I watched the news reports. And for the first time in months, I felt the crushing weight of the judge's silence finally dissolve. Could breathe again. Later that evening, I went into Maya's room. She was sitting at her little table, listlessly pushing a crayon across a blank page. I sat down beside her, the silence between us no longer heavy with fear, but open and waiting. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I could speak freely. "Maya," I said softly. "Remember Mr. Henderson? What he said to you was ugly and wrong. He was a bad man. And the people he worked for, they were wrong too. They tried to scare me and make me be quiet so they could get away with it." I took her small hand in mine. "But I didn't stay quiet, baby. Told. I broke the rule because it was a bad rule. And because I told, they won't ever be able to hurt another family again. You were so brave through all of this. You were so strong. And I am so proud of you." Tears, the first I'd seen from her in months, welled in her eyes. Not tears of fear or sadness, but of release. She threw her arms around my neck and held on tight. In that embrace, I felt my daughter, my real daughter, finally come back to me. A little while later, she picked up a bright yellow crayon and looked at me, a tiny tentative smile gracing her lips. "Mommy," she asked, her voice soft but clear, "can we put this one on the fridge?" My heart swelled so much I thought it might burst. The sun was finally returning to our little house. This fight was never just about a single, hateful word. It was about my daughter's right to exist in this world without being diminished, without having her light stolen. It was about protecting her beautiful, brilliant spirit. They saw my love for her as a weakness, a lever they could use to control me and silence me. They were profoundly wrong. A mother's love is not a weakness. It is a force of nature. And when it is used to defend a child, it can bring down empires, or a corrupt little system in family court. They ordered my silence, but they forgot that the most powerful language in the world is love. And that is a language that can never, ever be silenced. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, comment below, leave your like, and share this video with others.